Hey gang, welcome to Ozone Late Night. This is part one of my conversation with Paris Martineau, investigative reporter and feature writer over at The Information. All right, everybody, welcome to another installment of Ozone Late Night. Joining me for this edition, episode, segment, whatever, is Paris Martineau, a feature writer and investigative reporter for The Information. Paris has previously worked for Wired, The Outline, as well as one of my favorite magazines, New York Magazine, which I actually still have a physical subscription to. I know, because I'm old, that's why, and I like to read physical things. You can also see and hear Paris every week as part of This Week in Google over on the twit.tv network. Also, the first guest I've ever had who got a company shut down, and I'm pretty sure, at least intentionally. And you can find more info about Paris over at parismartineau.com. Paris, welcome to Ozone Late Night, and thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. I also have a print subscription to New York Magazine, so we're in good company.
God, I love New York Magazine.
It's just the perfect magazine. I've
it really
got
is.
Some old ones from the 60s sitting next to me right now.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
Oh man, I love old magazines. Old magazines, old type and all that stuff. Old ads. I have a couple of the, I don't remember who makes the books, but they're ads of the whatever decades, and I love all that stuff. I just like to see how everything has changed within, because I'm older, so I remember physical media and all that stuff. They have a name for my not besides the Generation X thing, but there's something else for people who grew up without persistent internet. There's some kind of not digital natives, I guess, is like my sister who's 8 years younger.
Like the, I guess like adaptation to the digital world.
Something like that, where I can actually have my cell phone away from me and not start to feverishly twitch for, an hour.
Yeah, I was thinking about it the other day. I was like, I can't remember the last time I was away from a phone or computer for longer than an hour or two.
Well,
it's probably not great.
There was a massive, not where we were, it wasn't that bad, but there was a windstorm up here because there was an atmospheric river because the climate is...
Oh, yeah, I saw it took down Twit Studios, famously.
Yeah, and so we were without internet for 24 hours, and I thought, I don't really care. I'm fine. It doesn't really matter to me. It was okay. I read and I drew stuff, and I thought, I don't know if my sister could hold up this well, because...
Wait, so fully without internet and, did you have cell service?
Yeah, but I didn't even...
Okay, then that doesn't count.
Yeah. Well, okay, but I wasn't doing... My cell phone, I was like, if I have an emergency, I can call somebody. But I didn't have it. I didn't use it. It was there in case, if there's an emergency, of course. I'm not going to, throw my cell phone into a Faraday cage and pretend that I'm living in the middle of a mountain and start sending pipe bombs to people. I'm not that type of person, but...
Listen, you could always try.
Yeah. I just like the fact that sometimes it's nice to just... not have stuff, internet for a little bit and not worry about anything and just be able to do other things. So, but I understand that not everybody can do that. It's just, and I don't blame anybody. Some people get all judgmental. Oh, you can't go about yourself. Well, if you grew up with that, then you don't know. It's tough to disconnect from something that you're saturated with. So I don't.
I love having a lazy Sunday or Saturday afternoon where I don't really look at my phone and just read all day. But I don't, I'm not saying I'm better than anybody for being able to do that or not being able to do that sometimes. I still think about the fact that Leo, my co-host on This Week in Google, did a whole week retreat where all electronic devices were confiscated. And that wasn't even the point of it. I'm not sure I would want to do that. I think I would miss too many things.
I would guess, I don't know, because I don't know Leo personally at all. I know him very vaguely through Twit from being a fan over the years and talking to him here and there. But I think that's also a generational thing where because he's even older than me, so he probably remembers a point where even, TV wasn't necessarily 500 channels. And so when people do these digital detoxes, sometimes I take note of their age on how easy it is for them. Because I'm like, yeah, there's probably something nostalgic about not having to worry about alerts and notifications and who mentioned you where and all this stuff, it does become overwhelming. I understand people who get stressed out by it. I think some people mock that.
Oh, it's incredibly stressful.
Yeah.
I mean, it is another appendage of my body, but it's a very stressful appendage.
Yeah, it's like a lot of things. It's one of these amazing tools where when you realize how much power there is in a cell phone in terms of computing and information, that is incomparable throughout all of history. But at the same time, many of the things that run on this particular device, I mean, all computing devices, but really the cell phone in a lot of ways, unlike others, and maybe in gaming, there are so many things that are engineered to make you not ever want to stop looking at it because it's essentially a predatory system in many ways, not necessarily by design. Well, some of them are by design.
Well, yeah, often by design. Because, I mean, every app, be it a tech platform or a news app or something else, it's typically measures success by like time on site or daily active users or daily active minutes. It's maximizing for your attention. And that may or may not be the best thing for you personally, but that's beside the point. You're just a number.
I know I read about one wellness app that would notify you to be in the moment all the time, and I thought, nope. I think they misfired on that one because that's it doesn't seem right. But let's talk about, because I don't think I've ever talked to somebody who's an actual journalist before. I'm pretty sure not. I normally talk to creative weirdos and whack jobs in like the artistic space, so I don't actually talk to somebody who. I won't say I don't talk to professionals, but I don't think I've ever talked to a journalist before. And I'm curious because you are quite a bit younger than me, and you are in an industry that correct me. I guess I'll ask it. I'm saying this as if I know anything. I don't know shit, so I will just ask. What brought you? Because normally when I talk to people, it's like 50-50. Some people knew what they wanted to do. They knew it. They did it. That's what they're doing. And the other half are like, well, I was welding together car parts, and then somebody said, would you like to paint a mural? And then I knew I was a painter. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's quite a change. So how did you come into journalism? What brought you to journalism in general?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was one of those kids that when I went into college, I knew exactly what I was going to do. Like, they were going around, I remember, like, freshman year being like, oh, you'll change your mind about what you think you're going to do. And I was like, oh, bullshit, I'm not going to do that. And I was dead set that I was going to be going to go to med school and be a psychiatrist. I was like, I got it figured out. And then I took, like, one semester of pre-med classes, and I was like, whew, I was wrong. Not the move for me. But I'd always liked writing. And I remember at the time when I was thinking about what interested me about psychiatry, the medical field, I was thinking about like writing scientific journals and things like that. And I remember I went to school at NYU, and I was like coming up the steps of the subway one time, and a friend I like known since I was a child turned to me and was like, totally apropos of nothing, she was like, Paris, I always kind of thought you'd be a journalist. And it was like the clouds opened up and the birds started singing and sunlight fell down on me, and I realized, like, I think that is kind of what I want to do. But even at the time, I was like, this is a terrible field to work in, especially for a young, know-nothing at the time teenager. Probably an incredibly financially irresponsible decision that will lead to ruin. So I was like, I'm going to give myself like 5 years or something, see if I can make it work. If not, I guess I'll go to law school. And turns out I'm quite good at it. And I was able to kind of get in a niche of tech journalism at a time when it was kind of a growing field within mainstream media. I had a couple of internships in college at CNN, and then at New York Magazine was my first one where I could kind of write full-time. And I was hired ostensibly to be a print, like an intern on the print team, but I would get up, I was like, I want to write for their tech section specifically. So I'd get up earlier in the morning, do all of my print transcriptions, and then spend every single day from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. pitching the tech editor, blogs and different feature ideas. And we ended up becoming kind of fast friends, and he'd hired me to work in like a freelance capacity for a bit after that. I think I've since found out that he didn't know at the time I was still technically in school, but I don't know. I wasn't telling him. I was like, I'm happy to have work in this industry. And he ended up introducing me to some folks at this site called The Outline. Because I would originally kind of planned to get a job at New York Mag, but something editorial-wise, or I think budget-wise, fell through. But I ended up interviewing for a staff writer job at this new website called The Outline, and got it to be their future staff writer, which was kind of a tech and science desk. And I ended up taking that. It was my first full-time gig in journalism, and it really hit the ground running from there.
So, and this is interesting too, because when you came into it, was that basically like the, what do you call it? Like the golden rise of tech, where everything was, oh yeah, the tech's going to rule the world and blah, blah, blah. Or was it already sort of, at what point was
right as it was starting to, I think we'd had kind of the period of tech's going to rule the world. These cool hacker kids are sitting in a dorm room, going to change everything. And things were starting to get a little wobbly. People were like, maybe this isn't all it's cracked up to be, and asking some questions. But most of the major news networks and news organizations didn't have more than one or two tech reporters, if that. There really were, it was New York Mag, The Verge, your general actual tech websites like CNET and Tech Crunch and whatnot, of course, had tech bloggers. But it was just at a time when different outlets were starting to get hip to the idea of, hey, we should have Facebook reporters and Google reporters and whatnot, and be building out these whole teams. Like I remember at the time that New York Times started hiring more, as did the Journal and Bloomberg. And I ended up being kind of in the right place at the right time with The Outline, which was, at the time it ended up being a short-lived experiment in digital media, but it was helmed by Joshua Topolsky, formerly of The Verge and This Is My Next and other stuff like that. So it had the attention of a lot of people in tech media. So I've been unlucky enough to experience 2 layoffs already so far in my short media career. And The Outline was my first. They laid off all their staff writers. But it was at the time when big layoffs in media were pretty unheard of. So immediately people in the tech journalism industry were itching to snap me up. And I ended up going to a Wired magazine after that, where I worked for a couple of years, which was fantastic, and got really into business and tech journalism and doing some more investigative stuff. And I did that for a couple of years until I was claimed by a Condé Nast media layoff, which is the parent company of Wired. And then I ended up at The Information, which was definitely the most hard kind of beat reporting I've ever done. I was originally the Amazon reporter for a couple of years until I splintered off into doing feature and investigative work, which is where I am now.
Yeah, it does. There's times where I wonder if some of the reason that, because it felt like there was the huge rise where tech was, the next big thing and there could be no wrong. And then there was like a plateau period. And it always felt like to me that the plateau period, because now, of course, we're seeing the other side of that, was because really nobody was covering anything. Nobody knew how to cover it. So there wasn't anybody doing any real digging. And so all you were hearing was basically the marketing speak and the PR and it's great. And we're going to deliver everything, because nobody knew not only how to cover it, but what to even ask, because it was all so new and it moved so quickly. That's what it felt like. And now, of course, like I said, we're on the other side of that, where now we're seeing that, a lot of these people that did this stuff, that move fast and break things, there's kind of a downside to that, isn't? People are getting just destroyed by this machine that everybody else is happy to take for free, and not thinking about, I wonder why it's free. Why could it be free? Why is there a free thing in life that's delivering all this stuff? We shouldn't think about this too hard. Right now, we'll just accept that it's fine. And it feels like now, everywhere within, this is the worst. Is this got to be the worst layoff year for tech in general? Far?
Ever. Tech has been on a period of just like infinite growth, I guess, since the .com boom. And this is the first real puncture to that bubble. And even then, it's still one of the largest and most prosperous industries in the American economy. It's interesting, though, because I think you're dead on the money with regards to the shifting opinions with the industry, because it feels like, obviously, in the wake of like .com bubble bursting, people thought of tech startups big and small as like this cute cool thing. Like, look at these Harvard students in their dorm room who are creating this fun social media website. Like, look at this guy who's made a drone that will deliver blood to people in Africa. Just like cute little human interest pieces or interesting novel business ideas that people in journalism and established positions were kind of giving them a cute little pat in the head, until all of a sudden, I think kind of the big turning point was around the 2016 election, with everything that happened with Cambridge Analytica, as well as just there was a convalescence of a variety of different factors that suddenly newsrooms everywhere were looking for specific answers. I think there was also everything going on in Myanmar at the time, and they were like, and they decided to point attack, and they were like, actually, we've never investigated or put much effort into seriously interrogating these platforms that now undergird all of our existence. I mean, social media is how most of us communicate with the world and get our news. It's people weren't really scrutinizing that until suddenly it was everywhere and everything.
Yeah, in some ways, Elon Musk's complete meltdown of Twitter, I will not call it by its other stupid name, of Twitter is actually... Right.
It's the worst.
Boy, you want to talk about a figure who was deified only to reveal what he actually was all about. I don't know that there is any... Is there a bigger poster child for the two-faced nature, and I refer to the Batman villain, which is one of my favorite villains of all time, the two-faced nature of tech, but Elon Musk, who on one side was, you have to correctly attribute some of, if not a lot of, where electric vehicles are, thanks to his fervor for it, and of course SpaceX. But then on the other side, I don't know, is one of the most toxic tech individuals around, since a lot of them other ones are just off the map now, but he seems to be the one that still has a megaphone. But I feel like that's your example of, yeah, this is what it was, everybody, at least for the most part, and we just didn't see it because we were too dazzled by, magic reusable rockets and a car that, could drive, well, not really itself, but was marketed that way. And yeah. I feel like he's the ultimate example.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think he's the perfect example of like flew too close to the sun. I think it's also somewhat, I mean, it's all his fault in the sense that I wonder sometimes if we would have a similar opinion of other tech billionaires if they posted as much as Elon Musk. Like, I think that I always joke among my friends about a concept I call CEO brainworms, which is, I think, when you rise to the level of prominence of being a CEO or founder of any company, especially one that raises tens of millions of dollars, if not hundreds of millions, something inside of you rots away, and a place where a human used to be, some parts of it cease to exist just by the nature of that power. And I think when you get to a certain level of accumulation of power as these multi-billionaires, that's certainly going to be amplified. And Elon Musk is unique in the sense that he has always been a poster at heart. He is always shouting out whatever thoughts he has to the internet through Twitter and other means. So I think we have a particularly close look at the inner working of what is going on inside of his head. And surprise, surprise, it's not all that brilliant. But I wonder if we would also feel the same about others if we got a peek inside there.
Oh, I just for myself, I think almost certainly, because it's not as if there aren't very well-known stories about like Steve Jobs and other people. And to be fair, it's not just tech individuals. We shouldn't pretend it's only.
Oh, yeah. People. No, I'm sure, everyone on Epstein's list.
Well, this is the thing is I've talked with people about this to some extent where, because before this, it was really sports celebrities were the ones that were known for this stuff, where they would have these flip outs and you're like, what reality are they living in? And one of the things I would say is, well, these are people who have been around a lot of money and a lot of influence and nobody to tell them otherwise in many cases for a long time. And that's going to do something to you. It's not to absolve them of their bad behavior, because in most cases they had parents who I'm sure taught them right from wrong, at least in most cases. But if you, to use the most superficial example possible to as something of pop culture, George Lucas made 3 films when nobody would say no to any of his bad ideas, and people wondered why they were miserable to get through. I'm sorry, 90s kids who are trying to reform the prequels. It ain't happening. It ain't happening. They suck.
The scream of 1,000 nerds is heard in the distance.
You know, these fucking people sometimes, I'm like, I'm sorry, they're shit movies. They're just garbage. The dialogue is not something that 4-year-olds would say to each other, but that, when you see the behind the scenes, nobody's saying no to anything because they were like, well, this is a huge IP with a lot of money and everybody wants to see Star Wars come back. And so everything that George Lucas says, we're going to do. And this is the same thing. Nobody says no to you. Nobody says that might be not a good idea. What do we expect? These are all human beings. We pretend they're not, but they're human beings, and human beings are susceptible to deciding that they're better than everybody because nobody tells them otherwise. So it seems inevitable to me.
Absolutely. I mean, I think if I was thrown into a situation where over a period of years, no one said no to me and everyone was enabling my worst tendencies to extract some sort of value from their relationship with me, I would probably turn into a monster. Hopefully not a monster to the extent of some of our luminary examples out there, but I think it's certainly a pressure cooker that even the best of us are probably incapable of avoiding.
Well, you combine that also with the fact that because there was such a delay in not only from investigative reporting, but also with legislation and regulation, which I know nobody wants to hear those words in America anymore because apparently you say that and you're a communist or something. But the fact that a lot of these people have been able to wield a tremendous amount of power with really no checks, and it doesn't seem like there's going to be any real ones anytime soon. Where do you think this goes? Where does this end up? I mean, we're in the layoff period now, and that's going to be a lot of turbulence, but ultimately the companies themselves are not, there doesn't seem to be much changing within their structure. So what is the end result of this? Where do we end up? Because I can't figure it out for shit, but I'm a dummy, so I'll ask somebody who's smarter.
I think the end result is sometime over the next couple of decades, probably. We will have, I think we're starting to see a little bit of it, a major legislative shift happening on a global scale. I think if we look at even like antitrust law, it's had a weakening over like the past 50 or so years towards the side of corporations, which has led to a lot of the kind of rampant growth of various unchecked capitalist exploits in the US and elsewhere. And I think what is slowly but surely going to happen is a regulatory crackdown, or at least the development of a more proactive regulatory body in the US, maybe in terms of like the FTC as well as like other legislative. But I say like a period of probably decades, because right now it seems like under Lena Khan, even though she's trying her best, the FTC is not in a position to really enact much large-scale change just because it doesn't seem like they have the manpower. And just trying to work on Amazon alone is pushing the agency to its limits, not to mention any of the other companies they need to also check. So I think it's like the beginning of a very large-scale shift, which isn't a very satisfying answer because it feels like there should be a response today, if not yesterday, to a lot of these things. And I'm sure that by the time any of these changes we're thinking about now come into practice, there's going to be God who knows how many different problems that have yet to be addressed then that we'll be angry about as well.
Well, that's what it feels like is going on now. I'm so sick of talking about this, just like everybody else, but you almost can't escape it anymore. It's like a vortex, a subject vortex, which is AI or machine generated. Whatever. I don't even like AI.
Oh, you're telling me every Wednesday night I'm in Leo Laporte's AI hole.
Bad I feel for you when I look. And let me just be clear about this. I have a lot of respect for Leo. I wouldn't have started a podcast without the fact that he really, and I think very, very intelligently, said this is a democratized media form where if you have an opinion, you can, I mean, don't get me wrong, it goes badly too, but so I love Leo. I've followed him for a very long time, but this thing with him and AI, I sit there and I'm baffled by the embrace of this thing with no, what feels like desire for anybody to say, okay, wait, can we monitor what we're doing with this? Because doesn't this just feel like the same thing we've gone through a bunch of times now?
It is the same thing we've gone through so many times. And it's just like, why? I don't understand their position, which again and again seems to be, well, AI, any of these large language models and training models have the right to get their paws on everything. We should give them everything, and we should give them everything for free so that they can be the smartest they can be. And I'm like, why? There's absolutely no reason we need to do that. I don't need to give any corporation anything, much less all of my information, much less the body of my work so that it can be smarter in whatever way you define intelligence.
I completely agree, because I'm an artist, and one of the things, and I'm not anti any of this stuff, really. I'm like, me and Ann Pruitt have had discussions about this, and we're kind of in the same place, very middle of the road, where it's these tools, just like any other tool, have great benefits when they're applied correctly. It's the technology is amazing when it works correctly, but at the same time, I've heard this, and I think Leo said some version of this. Well, artists steal, so why shouldn't this thing steal from them? And I'm like, okay, all right.
Well, artists are people that exist in the world rather than a privatized training model owned by a corporation that is used for profit. I think is my official rebuttal to Leo on that.
But there are also mechanisms for actual theft. If I start selling a video game with Mickey Mouse, and I say Disney's Mickey Mouse in my game, I am pretty sure a lawyer is going to find me at some point. So it's, that's the other end of it, is the wholesale vacuuming of creative input should at least be something that people have an option, because there's plenty of people who love it and they'll pour everything they ever made into it. Great, go for it. You're free to do that. I'm not telling anybody they shouldn't have the ability to do that. But this we don't have any roadblocks for any of this stuff, when it's almost where you don't think about the consequences of what this stuff could do in turn. Because I read something where they said that it helps cancer diagnosis, where it's massively helping and speeding up and identifying things that doctors might miss. Nobody's arguing against that. That's the stuff where I'm sure every doctor and patients will say, put all my info in there. If this will help me treat this, please.
Who cares? Yeah, throw it in there. There's no downside. It gets more photos of cancer and not cancer. Cool.
Yes, there's of course benefit, but this is like, AI is a hammer. You can kill somebody with it. You can build a house. It doesn't mean you should let a 4-year-old run around kindergarten swinging a hammer all day just because, hey, it's a hammer. Well, it's a tool. What are you going to do?
Do you use AI at all in your day-to-day life?
Honestly, I've because most of what I do is Photoshop, as you know. And so...
Oh, do I know?
Yeah. For people who don't know, I create a bunch of stupid stickers in Discord when I'm watching This Week in Google Live, usually, just to annoy everybody. And so...
They're delightful.
That's one word for them. But in Photoshop, there's a tool in there called Firefly, which is a machine generative image creator. And I've used it a few times. When there was one where I was trying to figure out... because there's certain things where photo reference is not readily available. I cannot find many photos of like an ogre with a rubber chicken through its eye if I want to draw that as a joke image, right? That's something I'm going to have created. So I've tried those, but honestly, and I like Firefly because Adobe seems to be trying to do this as ethically as possible. And people will say, oh, it has to be 100 or nothing. Nothing's 100 or nothing. Give up on that. You're living in an ideal fantasy world. It's gone. But they seem to try to make it where the art that's in there and the stuff that's being generated is based on people opting in, or at least, granting some kind of access, which I think is as good as you can do. It's an effort anyway. Yeah. And the stuff it generates is 85% shit. It's not good. It's not usable.
I mean, I think
anything.
Most of those, maybe I just haven't used enough good ones. I'm sure there are good ones out there, but whenever I use a art generation tool, maybe I'm just bad at prompts, but it fucking sucks. I somehow always have a prompt that is too complicated for it, and I'm like, all right, I gotta go slap some stuff together in Photoshop now.
Well, this is, I hear a lot of people respond, oh, you're just not doing it right. You just have to keep refining your prompts. And it's like, okay, I can spend 5 hours to refine all these prompts, or I can get just a basic thing and I can draw the rest myself in an hour. So what is the accomplishing? It's not accomplishing anything for me. And I feel like, because there's a lot of people say, well, the thing that you're being discriminatory because there are people who this allows them to create. Now, look, I want everybody to be able to express themselves. Believe me, I'm the first one to say, draw stuff, make music, whatever. Don't worry if it's good or bad. It's good for you, for your mind and your body and your outlook on life. You should be creative. I think it's one of the great, it's a hippy dippy thing I say all the time. I love it. But at the same time, this is not that type of thing. Yes, if you put in a prompt saying, make me a cat with a birthday hat on it, it will do that. But that's not really you creating. That's not the same thing. It's like a shortcut. And it doesn't really allow you to develop a personal style and a voice and to really, at least in my opinion, really enjoy what creation is. And my co-host, who's a writer, he tried it. He gave it samples of his writing and then told it to write some stories. And he said, it crafted something functional, but you could tell that there's no soul to it. And he read excerpts on, I think, a couple of shows back. He actually read it out. And then I think I put AI voices to it, which was funny. So yes, I've used it for that because I made joke voices. But he said you
I
would
love
know
the
right
AI
away
voices,
this is
actually. That's a very good bit of an AI, I think.
Yeah, well, there are good uses. But in general, it is certainly, I guess if you just don't know any different and it's better than nothing, I suppose you could say that. But would I put that pull quote on my AI tool? It's better than nothing. I don't think so.
I think you're right on the money. I think that AI is an interesting tool. It has very good limited uses like most tools do. I think it's just ridiculous how overblown it's gotten so quickly that everyone is like, this is the future of everything. It's very reminiscent of when everyone went gaga for the metaverse last summer or whenever it was. It's just like, come on, guys. We know you're moving on. You're going to move on to a different subject du jour in a couple of months or a year or two. Let's get to that point already.
Well, the other thing, too, is now we, of course, are finding out how much energy it consumes. And the fact that this stuff is going to start costing a lot of money if it's sustainable at all. They're going to start billing people a lot. I don't care what they start. Oh, well, it's pretty. I think OpenAI has done it pretty inexpensively. That's not a bad deal. It's not a bad deal today. Have you seen streaming services? Remember when they were a good deal? Holy shit, $5 a month and I can stream 4,000 shows all day, all night? Yeah. How long did that last? Not that long. You think these guys aren't going to come for their money?
Yeah.
It's astonishing how short our memories are for things, because this feels like NFT 2.0. I've seen that comparison other places.
Oh,
and I think
absolutely.
It's right there where, this is how artists will really make money, and it's going to be better because of the blockchain. Remember, the blockchain was the solution to every fucking problem in the universe. Yeah.
Did you ever have any NFTs?
God fucking no. I
Good. Yeah.
No
fucking thanks, more like it.
And I always try to be really clear with this, because there are digital artists, and I've bought digital art. So this is not me saying that you have to do everything. I do most of my art digitally now. It used to be traditional media. I'm mostly on an iPad now. So I have every appreciation for digital art. That's not a different type of art. It's not lesser. There's no better, no lesser. It's all what you enjoy and what you like making. So this is not an anti-digital art thing. But NFTs were a fucking scam from the minute they came out, because you didn't own shit. You didn't own anything.
It was a JPEG, baby. It was a JPEG of the blockchain. And it's honestly, I think it is a level of scam that I think is so blatant that it's kind of funny. Like the amount of millions of dollars spent on NFTs. I mean, good for whoever got that money, I guess. But bad for the world.
Every time one of these celebrities would complain that somebody stole my ape, and then somebody would right-click, copy, paste, and put it in Twitter and say, here, I gave it back to you. Congratulations. Theft averted.
I love it.
Fuck,
never really that era of Twitter where the ape guys were going ape shit, to say the least, was phenomenal.
I miss that Twitter. God, that it's funny when you
I don't see anything like that on Twitter nowadays, because it's just blue check nonsense.
I barely even. The only reason I open it is because there are certain people there that's the only way I can really. That DMing them is the only way that they exist, because I won't use Facebook. I won't use that at all.
Same.
I use Instagram, which is almost the same thing, but it's not. But
I mean, every day it gets a little bit closer to Facebook, I feel like, but it's not there yet.
Yeah, well, Instagram is fucking miserable. I really hate it as well, but a lot of my family's on there and they want to see my artwork, so I'm like, all right, I'll put. That's all I ever put on there. I never put a picture of like, hey, look what I had for breakfast, everybody, woohoo, because my breakfasts aren't that spectacular anyway, man. They're not. It's
you could draw a picture of your breakfast. That could be fun.
Yeah, I could do that, and that's fine. So it's one of those things where I'm there because, like a lot of these services, we're there because we have to be, not because we really enjoy anything. I still like Blue Sky because it's a wacko, it's a psych ward, and so I like it there, but that'll get ruined.
Speaking of which, Blue Sky opened up invites. Anybody can get on Blue Sky now.
Well, I'm glad they waited because I don't think anybody cares anymore, which is good because, as I've told people, the best part about Blue Sky is it's weirdos, perverts, and artists, and I want it to stay that way. That's my crowd, and I don't want, go to Mastodon if you want to talk tech and journalism. That's what that's for. Go to Twitter if you want to be a right-wing nut job because that's what that's for. Facebook is for talking to your grandparents, and Instagram is for buying shit that you shouldn't buy because it's scrolled by you in 15 ads every 10 seconds. So...
You should reach out to Blue Sky, pitch them that as their tagline, weirdos, perverts, and nut jobs.
It is not an exaggeration that is the line I use to sell it everywhere. And it actually has worked. People have been like, really?
I mean, I remember the week me and every other tech journalist joined Blue Sky, the posting energy was a level of feral that I feel like I have not seen since like the early days of weird Twitter. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, and now it's kind of settled into a nice sort of background hum, which I know. And this is another thing. This is this weird mentality now that technology or tech companies have, and honestly, shareholders in the stock market and everything else, have shifted us into where if it's not overly hyperactive and manically energetic, then it must be dying. Oh, no, it's dying because somebody's not posting every 5 seconds. I don't know that that's really healthy. So maybe the fact that certain people only post once or twice a day and I don't have to keep it open all the time. I don't know. I'm kind of
That's
okay
phenomenal.
with that. Yeah. It's laid back, man, and I can use some of that shit. Laid back is fine with me. Which I know is weird to hear a New Yorker say, but I'm kind of okay with laid back.
Listen, you're a New Yorker in California. Of course you're going to be pro laid back.
Let me tell you,
you've made your peace. You drive a car. You've sold out, man.
Well, yeah, I do. It is still very obvious to people out here that I'm not from here. Let's put it that way. I don't know that I'm ever going to become a native. Let's put it that way. I don't care if I'm here for the rest of my life. I probably will be here for the rest of my life, but I don't know. Slanted parking spaces. I just want to punch people. I just complained about this to somebody. What the fuck with these slanted parking spaces? I don't get it. Let me ask you something.
Hey, it's better than parallel parking. Yeah, what?
Oh, I hate parallel parking, but I mean straight parking spaces. What is the difficulty? I'm sorry. What is the difficulty? Nobody can explain it to me. It's fucking baffling. But let's get back to journalism because there was something that we talked about on our show a little while back, and my co-host, oh boy, this bugged the shit out of him. But since you're a journalist, I'd be interested in your opinion on this. And I don't know if you saw this, but there was a Guardian piece about an accusation of digital rape in the UK. Did you see anything about this?
No, I didn't.
Okay, I could probably find it. But the thing that was, the discussion was not around the actual case itself, which sounds fucking horrible because of course it is, because it's the internet. But there was the thing that we were talking about, my co-hosts, where is this? Oh, okay, wait.
I'm looking at it. A girl was allegedly raped in the metaverse. Is this the beginning of a dark new future?
That's it. So the thing that's interesting, and I know you can't read the whole article while we're on here. I mean, you could because I'll just go on and bore you to death. But the interesting thing about that, and this is to how journalism works, and I'm curious on how you struggle with this, is we got into, because he was very upset about the use of the word rape, because he said, well, rape is defined a very specific way. This is not something I think can occur digitally. And I said, well, wait a minute. Let me look up what the definition is and how the UK defines it, because maybe their definition is different, or maybe the legality of it is different. And what we determined is what it feels like the real problem is they use the word rape, but they also use the phrase sexual assault, which are often interchangeable, apparently, or used interchangeably, even though legally, at least in the United States, they're defined very differently. And I said, well, I think my problem with this article is not necessarily that it's incorrect, but because there's no real definition of the terms that are being used, it can be misleading. So it may be maliciously clickbaity written, or it just could be that this is not a very good way to use terms like this. Because that feels like, to me, the real problem is they're using interchangeable terms, or the writer is using interchangeable terms that can be confusing. And I imagine you have to be very careful about that stuff, where you have to be like, okay, I got to make sure I'm using, because
absolutely. I think my immediate thought here looking at this is I think that what is unique about this article that is causing this issue is that this is an opinion piece by a regular columnist, Nancy Jo Sells, who, based on looking at her byline, seems to write like once a month about the topic of relationships or sex-related issues and the internet. So as an opinion piece by a guest columnist, probably the bar for correct quote-unquote language is a lot lower, because a lot of major news organizations kind of let their opinion columnists have free reign, because, I mean, as we see with the New York Times often, kind of the job of an opinion columnist is to get people fired up in some way, either positively or negatively. So I think possibly because the subject of this article is, it is kind of about, is this really rape, is one of the questions in it. And is it correct to call something uncomfortable that happens to a child in an online world rape, or by what name should we refer to it, is part of the question. I think that's why they probably use that language.
Well, see, and this just proves that I'm a fool, because I didn't even realize it was an opinion piece. I was so fixated on the terminology, I didn't even see that it was an opinion piece. I looked at it and I went, oh, okay, well, let me
see. And I mean, I think that's part of the thing is, like, I don't think most people notice those sort of things. And I think that's kind of part of how opinion pieces work in major media publications is, you know, opinion is up there, but it's tiny in the top left corner and it's not really said again, partially because for most readers, that isn't necessary. It's just what the content of the article is. But I know that I guess the Information has some opinion columnists, but not many anymore. But for a lot of my friends who work in larger publications with a big opinion desk like the Wall Street Journal or the Times, this difference between news and opinion, and often the lack of distinction for the average reader, is a big deal, because it causes people to have like a, what the hell? Like, why is The Guardian posting this article conflating a girl getting surrounded in the metaverse with gang rape?
Well, yeah, because he was all fired up about it, because he gets very hung up on language and stuff like that. And I was like, all right, let me take a minute and let me just see what we're talking about here. But I completely missed the opinion piece part. So I was my kind of take from it was, yeah, I don't think this is a great use of these terms, but you're right. If it's an opinion piece, and if the point was to generate anger, well, then mission fucking accomplished, because he was hot right off the bat for that one. And I was like, okay, all right. I mean, we talked about it for a good, I want to say, an hour, because we were kind of, you know, going back and forth and different stuff. And I was saying that my problem is that, you know, I feel like there is that often, I don't care that language changes. I mean, I don't necessarily like, you know, how words get abbreviated, but guess what? My parents didn't like shit I said when I was younger. So that's the nature of being older and being younger. So that's fine. My problem has been, and I think this is kind of tangential, if not directly related to the whole mixing opinion and news thing, is there's less of a effort a lot of times to say, okay, this is what these terms mean. So you throw a term out and just assume, or don't care, which is the bigger problem, that people understand what it means, even if it can have a very different meaning. And you can apply this to anything. It doesn't have to necessarily be just this type of article, but it could be anything, where if there's not a common, maybe a media vocabulary, and that goes into kind of the way that people aren't really raised to look at media and understand what's like. I didn't see it was an opinion piece. Now, although I can detect in 2 seconds when an article on a website is actually an ad, where that little sponsored by thing is there, like I spot that shit immediately, but this went right by me. Even though I try to, I used to say critically think about things, but that term seems to be being co-opted now by eventually everything is fucking ruined. So it's like critical thinking is a neutral term, and yet just like free speech absolutionist, it becomes okay, this is an excuse to just spew hate at people and be like, hey, I'm just kidding,
I'm just critically thinking here.
Oh god. Yeah. So yeah, that's fascinating, because that's a real-time example.
No, I do think that your qualm about language, though, is a fair one, and I think that it's something that the media doesn't do a good enough job explaining their processes to readers. Like, for instance, at the information, it's a particular process because we're obviously writing for a very specific type of reader. We're writing for a reader who is in a specific industry and is able to and has decided to subscribe to our absurdly expensive publication to read about tech and business news. So there are certain things, like that Alphabet is the parent company of Google and things like that we don't have to explain. But a big part of the process is when you're working with editors and the editors above them and our copy editor who comes in to read it the last part. One of the common comments and edits you get is like if you use a term or an acronym or some shortened thing to be like, take a step back, explain what that is to the reader, or like, let's put this in context. And that is what a good editor or second editor or copy editor should do. But I think part of what has happened is as the media industry has gotten under more and more pressure, you have all these different outlets fighting for your attention. You have to put stories out faster and faster. And a lot of outlets, your reporters, not much less the editors, don't have the sort of institutional support to be making those smart calls and putting that much thought into how they're presenting language and what words they are choosing when communicating with readers.
And isn't that only going to get worse as media is just dismantled and destroyed and it becomes smaller and smaller teams, sometimes doing work they don't really have the training? I mean, yeah, there are
absolutely, especially in the ChatGPT universe of media. I mean, it's not going to know how to do anything.
Well, that's and the other thing is this. I don't want to get back into it, but the other thing is if this stuff is all consuming itself, and this topic's been brought up by a lot of people who are concerned about it, you're just going to have basically homogenized reporting, writing, I don't know what you want to call it, but you can already see it's I can't tell as much because I'm not a writer, so you would see this better than me, but certainly when it comes to image generation, I know right away when it's AI 9 times out of 10. I can tell. I'm like, oh yeah, that looks the same as 80 other things that look the same as that. So my immediate default is it's probably machine generated. And then occasionally you find somebody who you find out, guess what, has done extensive work outside of the prompt to finish the thing and pretty it up and make it look different. But I would assume that you would probably be able to discern artificial written articles because they don't write like people. They can't, right? I mean, it's going to stick out.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does. I think some of the tells, at least for ChatGPT, is like overly wordy, but not in a like, I feel like people, when they get wordy or write long, they're trying to do something with it, whether it's stylistic or over explaining a specific topic with a particular human bent to it. ChatGPT and these other large language models have a very armchair perspective, but yet they also over explain the simplest concepts because obviously they don't know anything. They're simply basing their writing off of just a corpus of work that they've seen before, and they have no idea whether or not it makes sense to over explain what Facebook is versus what a neural network is.
It's going to be raining today, so make sure you take your umbrella. An umbrella being a hand-operated device that will shield you from the rain, which is water that comes down from the sky and attempts to make
exactly.
Really yeah.
It's like, strange. Wow. Okay.
So you explained umbrella to me. Well, that's something that a normal person would need explained in such interesting detail. Okay, got it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know what? Let's. I think this is a good place to wind up this particular segment. So we'll bring this part to a close, and then we're going to get into the fun stuff, because I will try to avoid mentioning the letters AI or tech apocalypse, which I managed to avoid till just now. So we'll try to stay out of that, in the second part. So again, a reminder that you can find Paris's work over at The Information, which is just theinformation.com, right?
Right.
Yep. And you can see her more work and more background on her over at parismartineau.com. So Paris, thank you for doing this first segment. And we'll now pretend that some amount of time is going to pass. We'll pull the veil down. All right, everybody. We'll talk to you again in a week. Talk to you then. Visit OzoneNightmare.com to subscribe to new episodes, browse through our back catalog, or to find links to support the show. Follow @OzoneNightmare on Twitter for the latest episode postings and other show information. If 280 characters just isn't enough, you can always email us, theozonenightmare@gmail.com. Music for Ozone Late Night is provided by Ogre. Visit ogresounds.bandcamp.com to hear and purchase his fantastic selection of music.